Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. You walked the Camino de Santiago and met you. Maybe it was the best version of you. Maybe it was the worst. Maybe it was your authentic self that you were longing to meet and had suspected was hiding somewhere within you. Hi, this is Nancy, and this week on the podcast, we are all about what happens after you walk the Camino. We are about how to bring home the gifts of the Camino to change your life for real. It's not just about tending to the inner landscape, which is, of course, important and necessary. It's also about adjusting the external features of your life, what you do each day, who you share your time with, and how you find your post-Camino dream and go after that. My guest today is Kathy Kehe, pilgrim and life coach, who is passionate about you finding and bringing home the gold from your pilgrimage. She and I really got into it, as that is my passion too. The other thing that's happening today, Tuesday, November 4th at noon, is that we are opening enrollment in La Terraza, our new pilgrim community, for anyone who has recently returned from walking the Camino. Well, it doesn't have to be recent. To join now, you just need to have walked the Camino, any of the routes, for any distance or any number of days. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you may remember that back in August this year, 2025, I shared with you a bit about La Terraza, and I invited you to join in on the challenge we were doing at that time. We were focusing on mining the lessons of the Camino. If you'd like to revisit those episodes, jump back to the episode that came after number 126. These next 4 episodes aren't numbered because they were a bit of a diversion from the content you typically find in this podcast series, but you can find them by going in order after number 126 or by searching for After the Camino. If you are jumping into the podcast for the first time, or if you have recently returned from the Camino, I'll catch you up with a little background on La Terraza. After 2 decades of assisting pilgrims in getting ready to walk the Camino and getting started on the trail, I have concluded that the most daunting part of walking the Camino is just getting started. But here's the thing we often overlook. The hardest part of walking the Camino is coming home. And that's the part we've been paying the least amount of attention to. So in August this year, I launched La Terraza, an online pilgrim community as a place for pilgrims to gather to share in the spirit of the Camino and bring the experience home. The post-Camino blues are a very real thing, and pilgrims often find themselves deeply grieving their Camino experiences once they leave the trail. Then they get home and they get questions from friends like, "How was your vacation? What was your favorite part? Would you do it again?" These are all valid questions coming from people who don't know what you just did. So what do you say? How do you talk about something when you aren't really even sure what happened? Do you know who are the best people to talk with about your Camino? Other pilgrims. They get it. They understand what you've done, how it impacted you, and how hard it is sometimes to talk about it. Imagine you're walking on the Camino, and you're coming into one of the small towns on the way. One of the first things you see is a collection of tables and chairs out in front of a bar, filled with other pilgrims. They are laughing, talking, eating, drinking, maybe commiserating or celebrating, possibly planning their next stage. That gathering place is the terrace of the bar, in Spanish, la terraza. It's where we now gather to share the spirit of the Camino with people who get it. Returning home from the Camino can be a shock to the system, and life off the Camino is decidedly different from life on the Camino. We have so many other things to tend to, and life is no longer as simple as get up, walk, take a break, walk, check in, shower, do laundry, eat, sleep, and do it all again. So we have created a space just for pilgrims where we can gather and share stories we can all relate to, where we can learn from each other as we plan our second or third pilgrimages on different routes, where we can process and savor the Camino experience, discover its lessons, and figure out how to talk about it to people who don't get it. How do we do this? There are two main paths within La Terraza. One is the self-guided, reflective path, supported by a bunch of core content that I create each month. This path is like an extension of this podcast, but it's exclusively focused on what happens after you walk the Camino. It comes with audio sessions and journaling prompts to guide you through the post-Camino blues, grieving the end of your time on the Camino, figuring out what just happened and why it feels so significant, and telling your Camino story. That's just the start, by the way, because each month you get new audio sessions, and all of the sessions come with transcripts, in case you prefer reading over listening. This is called the core plan. The other path is for people in La Terraza who want all that core content, but who also want to bring the Camino home the way they walked the Camino, with other pilgrims. We have gatherings almost every week, starting with our twice-monthly Tapas Tuesday call. This is where we come together on Zoom to share our Camino stories and bear witness to each other's experiences. We've also just launched our La Terraza book club, and we are reading a book you've heard me talk about many times, The Art of Pilgrimage by Phil Cousineau. It's not too late to jump in on that, by the way, as the first discussion call is scheduled for Thursday, November 13th. Our second book will be The Way, My Way by Australian author and filmmaker Bill Bennett. And I'm excited to share that Bill will be joining our book club call in January to share in our discussion, thanks to one of our members, Vicky, who reached out with the invitation. Twice a month, we also have office hours where pilgrims can jump on a call to talk about whatever's on their minds, which is usually planning their next Camino. See, our community members have walked many of the different routes, and they are helping each other plan their next pilgrimages on the Portuguese, Frances, and Del Norte routes. We are also collaborating on a community-sourced guide for the Frances and Portuguese routes. This is where our members contribute their first-hand, real-world Camino experiences by sharing their favorites from each stop along the way. It's a wonderful way to relive your Camino while at the same time creating an incredible resource for future pilgrims. By the way, while right now all of our members are experienced pilgrims, we have plans to open up the community to pilgrims getting ready for their first ever pilgrimage early next year. As you listen to all this talk of Camino-themed content, you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of Camino stuff. I have other things I want to do with my life. Our members also share things that are Camino adjacent, meaning in the spirit of the Camino. For example, in December, I'm launching the LT Dream Collective for people who are ready to go after their next big non-Camino dream or goal I want to do it with the support of people who know how to come together in kindness and generosity of spirit to pursue and reach a goal. I admit, the name is a little corny, Dream Collective, but that's only because I don't like the name Mastermind. But that's really what it is, a group of like-minded people who will meet regularly to share ideas, advice, resources, and experiences as they work towards specific goals or personal growth. The goal of the Dream Collective is to provide accountability, encouragement, and collaborative problem solving, all within a community of pilgrims and the spirit of the Camino. Everything I just described is available in the La Terraza All Access Plan. And if that's just a bit too much, or if you would simply like to spend time in quiet, self-guided reflection, you can select the Core Plan. Now, I'm going to be very candid with you. This is still a new community, and we are building it slowly and intentionally to be sure we build something that will last and that has true value. That means that some things are still under construction, but it also means that you get to help build things. We have events on the calendar through January, and those events will be extended out through the year as we get your feedback on what you like and what you don't like. Bringing the Camino experience home takes time and effort, and I don't want you to have to go it alone. I think we are building something truly valuable, and I would love for you to be a part of it. I do know that La Terraza isn't for everyone, but if you would like to be sure your Camino experience comes home with you from the trail, check us out. You can join us by going to my website, thecaminoexperience.com/La Terraza. That's LATERRAZA. And the link is in the show notes. Now, I have two more things to tell you about before we meet Kathy to talk more about bringing your Camino home. The first is something we have planned for Thanksgiving weekend 2025. Do you remember my guest from 2 weeks ago, episode 132, Jen Manglos? Jen and I are going to be hosting a gratitude walk in the Seattle area the day after Thanksgiving. That's Friday, November 28th. I'll give you the details, and they are in the show notes. But in case you are not in the Seattle area, I have an invitation for you too, so stay with me. The Seattle walk will be at Carkeek Park from 10 a.m. to noon. Jen and I are planning a simple, reflective, and contemplative gratitude practice for the walk, and we would love for anyone within driving distance of Seattle to join us. To give us an idea of how many people to expect, we would love for you to take a moment to register for the walk. You can do that on my website at thecaminoexperience.com/gratitude. And now, if you are not in the Seattle area and you would like to participate, you are invited to host your own gratitude walk wherever you are, and Jen and I will share with you the reflections we are using for our Seattle walk. I just need you to register for that too, so I can be sure to get the prompts to you about a week before your walk. You can schedule your gratitude walk for any day and any time on Thanksgiving weekend that works for you, your time zone, and your people. For those of you not in the U.S., that is November 27th through 30th. Let's have some fun with this, shall we? If you're game, drop by my website and register your walk. Then invite your people to join in. This might also be a great opportunity to meet other pilgrims in your area. So if you'd like, I would be happy to share your event with my email list, my podcast listeners, and even on social media. All with your permission, of course. Okay, so you can register your walk at thecaminoexperience.com/gratitude. Okay, last thing to tell you about before we meet Kathy, and this one is about Kathy. As I mentioned a few moments ago, In La Terraza, we meet twice a month for our Tapas Tuesday gatherings. Usually, we use that time to share Camino stories and lessons around the community's monthly theme. For example, our theme for October was telling your Camino story, so that was an easy match. Our theme for November is embodying gratitude at the pace of walking, and Jen Manglos will be hosting a workshop for us related to that theme at our November 18th Tapas Tuesday gathering. In January, today's guest, Kathy Kehe, will be hosting both of our Tapas Tuesday events to serve up a 2-part workshop on bringing a quality of your Camino experience back home into your daily life. You're going to hear more about that in our conversation. So let's get to it. And I hope I will see you in La Terraza this week. Kathy, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thanks, Nancy. It's good to be here.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this for so long because I know you and I share a passion for bringing the Camino experience home, as well as the Camino itself. So I'm really excited to talk with you about that topic. You ready for that?
I am ready.
All right. Very good. I'm not sure how much you've listened to my podcast, but if you listen to even 1 or 2 episodes, you probably already know I like to start by putting the pin in the map and just finding out your Camino experience. So would you just start by telling us what you have done on the Camino? What's your background and your experience walking the Camino?
Yeah. I walked the Camino first in 2012.
Okay.
It was a time in my life where my 2 sons were preparing to go to college. They're the same year in school. And I knew that my life that summer was about to change big time and that fall in 2012, because not only would one be going to college, but my only 2 sons were going to college. So it was an instant empty nest. And I had been preparing for that, but what I didn't really see coming was that I would find out that my husband of 25 years was in another relationship.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And our marriage ended that summer. So not it was literally an empty nest. We went from a family of 4 to all 3 people that I shared the home with leaving at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You get it, Nancy. I was really feeling like, who am I? Like the rug was pulled out from underneath me. Who am
Completely.
I? I had put so much into being a mom and a wife, and my so much of my identity was wrapped up in that,
Hmm.
that when all this happened, I was just feeling really lost.
I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, I was in a program at the University of Santa Monica in spiritual psychology. So it was sort of like a life preserver.
Okay.
And one time in the sharing, when we were doing all the sharing in school, I had been crying through the story so many times in this week-long lab that we were doing. My 2 sons are going away and my marriage is ending, and I don't even have a job right now that I can distract myself with. And after, I don't know, Nancy, like 10 or 12 times of saying that, I finally heard it differently and said, well, my 2 kids are gone. My husband's not around. I don't have a job. And it was like this light bulb moment where suddenly this 8 or 10 year dream of doing the Camino was now just an open path ahead of me.
Oh my gosh. I got chills. I totally got chills. What a way to shift the mindset.
Absolutely. There was so much grace in it. My
Mm.
foreign exchange student was living with me at the time. He was from Spain and he had come back for the summer. And when I said, Diego, I'm thinking about going to Spain in 2 weeks and walking the Camino, he's like, oh, Kathy, yes, of course, you have to come, and he lives in Santander.
Oh,
So I had that encouragement from him to go. And of course, there was still grief on the trail, but I really had the strong intention to practice walking into my new life. And I thought 500 miles should be enough.
here's hoping. And was it?
Of course. I mean, we know the story, right? It was magical. It was wonderful. I got to experience myself.
Mm.
And where before it was, considering what are we going to have for dinner? Well, this person's allergic to, this person doesn't like, this person won't eat, to, like what was left for me to cook to suddenly like, oh my gosh, I get to pick what I want to eat for every single meal. And I get to walk as far as I want to walk or as little as I want.
Wow.
And found a family, a Camino family. They were Spanish people mostly. And I'll tell you what, getting into another language that I'm good at, but I'm not perfect in, the mind chatter had to stop because it couldn't keep up. There were so many miracles about it, just so many blessings, so many wonderful things that I experienced just in a whole new reset.
Hmm.
And at the end of all of that, I came home, finished my master's program, became a life coach, kind of restarted everything, started over again, really recreated a new relationship with my two sons who were now adults. So that's a little bit about the Camino. You can certainly ask me more if you want to, because there's always so much to say. I don't know what to land on.
Well, yes, and that is it. What do we talk about when we talk about something that so completely rearranged our lives?
Hmm.
Yeah. Have you been back?
I have been back. In 2018, I went back and walked part of the Norte to Santander, stayed with my exchange student's mom, and I just wasn't feeling the same spirit I was used to on the French Camino.
Okay.
So after a couple days with her, I made the decision to take a bus down to Leon. I finished the French Camino, and then I've been back multiple times just doing a few of the portions that I really enjoy. Sometimes
Mm.
I'll take teeny tiny little groups of one or two people and walk with them and support them. But I think next year the Camino's calling me to do a Camino again.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. What was it like to go back to the Frances route?
Once I left Santander,
Yeah.
for me, and I'm not putting down the northern route at all, but for me, coming back to the Frances, I fell in with a group of people. I made an instant connection. The focus for me seemed to be a little bit different. And I love to have those depthful conversations with people. I'm an open book, and I feel like a lot of people on the Frances are as well. And for whatever reason, lovely people that I met on the Norte, but I just wasn't connecting on that deep level with them. So it was like being home again.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I consider the Frances route my home, sweet home,
absolutely.
my hometown. It's a 500-mile, 800-kilometer hometown.
I love that so much.
Yeah, yeah, every bit of it feels like home. So we should explore that a little bit. What has the Frances route feel like home?
Wow, good question. Well, I- I'm going to answer in a funny way and say that when I was really deciding my next steps, when I was staying with Marta, Diego's mom, I asked her about the northern route, and she said, it's known for, and this was 7 years ago, so this could have changed, but she said a lot of people who do it go there for sport because it's more challenging,
Mhm.
and they go there for solitude, which are great reasons, but it wasn't what I was looking for.
Okay.
So I think that the Frances, whether it be the ley lines, whether it be the townspeople, I don't know exactly what that magic is, but I do feel like a lot of the people who go there are first timers. And I think that there's something about our first Camino. I'd be curious if you would agree. There's something about that first Camino that's just unparalleled and pretty unrepeatable. So I like being in that vibe with people who are beginners and open and in the unknown. I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, is that a sacred place? That's the liminal space, is to be in the unknown and to be with other people who are in that space. Plus, it's just stolen my heart, especially that part from Saint Jean to Pamplona,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
well, or to Logroño or to Santo Domingo. Just that first section and crossing the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
For me, there's nothing like it.
I think you're onto something. The liminal space is it's such a unique space. It's a space where some of our walls drop down, some of our roles just drop away for while we're on the route. And when we share that space, something comes out, something comes together. We have a way of connecting that we wouldn't have if we weren't together in that space.
I completely agree with you. And I'd add, it's a lot. The liminal space, it's not something that we typically want to sign up for. Ego's like anything but. I just want the known. I want to stay in my safety bubble. But the liminal space of not knowing the language, not knowing who you're going to meet, not knowing if you can do it, not knowing how the body is going to respond.
And not knowing who you're going to be when you get to the end, whatever that end is.
Absolutely. That wasn't on my mind in the beginning. If it was on your mind, kudos to you. But in
You
the
know what?
beginning,
No, I don't think that idea resides in the conscious mind. I think that's a really deep subconscious thing that is influencing us when we're getting ready and when we're planning to walk and when we're on the trail. But it's awfully difficult to talk to first time pilgrims about that
yeah,
because I think we've got to go through it.
I think so too. I completely agree with you. And I think so all of that unknown in the mental space and all of that nervousness on the emotional level, and then the physical challenge of it all, it's kind of like the ego has nothing left to hold on to.
No defenses.
It has no defenses. The defenses are down
Yeah.
because we're trying so hard on every level to do the journey that I think it's a great recipe for dropping the walls. And everybody's in that same boat. And we sometimes can't help but be open with people. And then when we see that it's okay and people are responding and we feel that beautiful, authentic connection that we feel when we're just showing up like that, why would we go back?
Well, why would we go back if we don't have to? And if we can find the pathway to stay with that authentic self? I think that's what the work after the Camino is about.
100%.
Yeah. When you talk about the home, feeling like home, one thing I want to ask you about is there any part of it that it feels like home because it's where you found your authentic self? And that's a new home base for you?
That's a great question. So my first year of my master's in spiritual psychology was the year before I did the Camino.
Hmm.
I did the Camino in the break, and my second year of spiritual psychology was the year after. I can't separate those two things that were both absolutely life-changing. They just wove together so perfectly. The master's was the program
Uh-huh.
and the classroom for sure. The Camino was definitely the classroom.
It's like the lab, right? You're doing your lab work on the
Yes,
Camino.
that's so true. And so when you say home, my master's was in basically finding your authentic self. If there
Wow.
is such a program, right? Spiritual psychology, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so the whole program was looking at dropping conditioning. It was looking at self-forgiveness and letting go of anything that we could that was no longer serving and coming back to the authentic self. So was the Camino.
Hmm.
So when you say home, yes, I have to give credit to both of those things, but absolutely that's where I found home and home inside of myself and
Hmm.
that more authentic self. And I don't you think that's true for so many people? They may not use those words, but
Yeah,
but I have heard so many times, I was my best self on the Camino. I
that's
just
it.
want to be that. And I think that that's another way to say the authentic self.
Yes, and that's how I've been articulating it for years. What I love about being on the Camino is it's where I meet the best version of me. It's the me I actually like, you know?
Right.
And I don't know if I'm the only one, but I have struggled with self-love and self-esteem throughout my life.
You are not the only one.
I didn't think so. But to get on the Camino and as I'm walking and as I'm interacting with people, discovering that a part of me comes out that I actually really like witnessing. I like seeing how I interact with people, and the satisfaction that we both get from the interaction starts to just pull out that side of me that I really like. And I'll tell you, I can't always sustain that at home.
Right. Because we go back to the conditioned world and we go
Exactly.
back to busyness and
Yeah.
our challenges and people who expect things of us and the American culture and any number of things that will get in the way.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a Rumi quote, Nancy, that I love. I wonder if you've heard it.
Let's have it.
I might not get it perfect, but he says, your task is not to seek for love. And I would put in there joy, authentic self, peace. I would put any of those words into that sentence. But your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have placed against it.
Mm. What do we do with those barriers when we find them?
Exactly. I think that's it. And I think the key that I have found, you asked about home on the Camino. I think it's that we leave so many of those barriers at home. We don't know we have necessarily, but they're just not there if we aren't doing our emails and we're
Mhm.
not in challenging relationships or even great relationships that take our time. It's like all that gets stripped away and we just get to be the best version of ourselves, which is there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It is there waiting to be expressed, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
And then I think one of the tasks, I think the work that we have to do when we return home from the Camino is to continue to bring out that version of ourselves and find ways to express it regardless of the circumstances.
Yes. I agree. We're both doing that work in the world. I know that you're doing that with your people, with your groups,
Yeah.
and so am I. And it's it's been a journey that I've taken and continue to take, but and it's a journey that feels like such an honor to accompany other people on.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely an honor. Let's stick with you a little bit longer, if you don't mind, and talk about what happened for you after the Camino. So you walked in 2012 and now we're 2025. How is your life different because you did the work to bring the Camino home?
Oh my gosh. I don't know where to begin. It's different in so many ways. And a lot of those ways were, I'll call it spirit assisted or Camino magic. And a lot of it was intentional and hard work. I'll say that I loved the simplicity on the Camino. We'll just begin with that one as an example. And over those 13 years, I just kept trying to let go of more things. Well, first, I had to move out of the house that we had been living in. That was huge. And then it
Sure.
seems like there have been three or four iterations after that of simplifying and letting go and letting go and letting go of things. And I'll just jump to the chase here. My 10-year relationship that I was just in ended in December, and I had been living with him, and I looked around me, kind of took an assessment of my life. I looked around and I thought, the work I'm doing now as a life coach, that's one big change I've made in my life is that I did get a job. I've been a life coach for 11 years. That's online. The home that I own is being rented to a couple that I absolutely love. I had just been living in this teeny tiny home with my boyfriend, so I don't have that much here anyway. I happen to have gotten a tiny micro camping van at the beginning of that year. I'm like, I don't think I need to live in a home right now. Oh, and I had been pet sitting. I had been pet sitting for people in northern Colorado. It's kind of like being an hospitalera to pets.
Oh, sweet.
I know. I stay in their homes. I connect with the pets. I care for the pets. I give people peace of mind while they're traveling. And I do my coaching work in my groups from wherever I happen to be. So when I left my boyfriend's house, I thought, yeah, I think I can do this. And anytime in the past years that I had heard of somebody living a nomadic life, there was a part of me, kind of like the first time I heard about the Camino, that's like, oh, that sounds so cool. I'm going to do that someday. And then I could finally just step into it at the
Mm.
beginning of this year. So I'm doing this call from my micro camping van in Longmont, Colorado, between pet sitting jobs. And I took 9 weeks at the beginning of the year to travel to the Pacific Northwest where my son lives, do an adventure there. Next year, I plan to take a couple months off and be in Spain and France. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, and there's so much more I could say, but I'm learning, I'm embracing being single right now. I'm embracing, I guess it's a continuation of that Camino journey, really getting to know myself even better.
Mm.
And part of that is I love adventure, I love change, and I really have that all over the place in my life right now.
The notable thing in this story is that it took time and you
Yeah.
worked for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't handed to you. You didn't get home and open a letter in the mail that said, here is now what your life is going to look like. Don't worry, it's handled. You had to do the work.
There was a lot of work to do, inner and outer. I
Yeah,
know that you know that there was a lot of inner work that took place
absolutely.
and a lot of changes that I needed to make on the outside. And there was grace.
Mm.
Like I didn't plan, just as a little aside story, I had not been planning on buying a camping van, but my boyfriend, one February, he's like, I've been looking at stuff. I think we should get a van and travel in it. And I'm
Okay.
like, okay, well, what do you got? And he said, let's go to Colorado Springs. I found this one that I really like. And I could feel my resistance come up. So here's
Mm.
the inner work. I could tell that he always comes up with all kinds of different ideas. And I'm like, oh, that's not practical. Oh, I don't know. And instead I'm like, well, what might happen if we just go look?
Mm.
So that was a little bit of inner work, and I set that aside. We went and we looked. Long story, we drove home with the van.
Ah, love it. Love it.
Yeah. So that was one that in some ways it had just come to me,
Hmm.
but also I had done an ideal scene like the one that I walked you through,
Hmm.
Nancy, that it said I'm living a nomadic life. I'm traveling around. Like it had been in my consciousness. I just didn't see the way that it was going to happen.
And that is so often the case. We can see it, we know what we want,
Hmm.
but the how
Hmm.
is not in the playbook yet.
Exactly.
And that I think ties back to what you said about grace and doing the work.
Hmm.
So what do you think is the relationship between grace and doing the work?
Well, the word that popped into my mind was balance. And another word that pops in is patience.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a prescription.
Hmm.
I don't think there's one way. I know there's not one way. But when it comes to grace or doing the work, hmm, I think the closer we get to that authentic self, the more we're holding hands with grace. And doing the work right now for me is not pushing, learning to not push, but learning to pause and listen for divine timing, wait for divine timing. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I don't think for me there's not a clear answer. What about you? I'm curious.
Well, what I've discovered in my experience, and so again, it's not a playbook, it's not a rule book, it just seems to be my experience, is when I do the work, when I do my part, it's like it throws the door wide open for grace. And then things fall into place. It's like being in the flow, that I'm not crazy about that saying, but I think it really is true that when we are doing our part, when we're saying, I believe in my dream, I believe in my vision, and we take the steps towards that, then grace goes, I'm on the job. I got you covered. And I think that's been my experience anyway. And I just think back to when I first started leading groups on the Camino in 2013, I worked hard to try to figure out what I wanted to do. I worked so hard, a lot of processing and reflection and reading and researching and exploring and trying to figure out what the heck is my mind to do. And then just one day in the shower, the idea came. And I almost couldn't breathe. I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. That's it. And that was when the idea came to help people get started, which is the most daunting part of walking the Camino.
And I think that's brilliant.
And that's all people needed, right? Let's get them to Pamplona. And by Pamplona, they're like, I think I got this. Bye, Nancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here's the beauty of it. Through my work over how many years, that was 2016, 2013 to 2016, I led groups. Then I had to take a break to care for my elderly parents. Started back up after the pandemic. And that's how long it took to realize, wait a minute, it's not enough to get people started. We've got to support them on the back end. We've
Hmm.
got to be there after they have this tremendous experience because look how long it took me to figure this out. I bet other people are still trying to figure out what just happened.
I agree with all of that. So I agree with every single thing that you just said. And I think that obviously I do. This is a big part of the work that I do. I think
Yeah.
that return journey is so important. And until recently, I don't think that there's been a lot of support in that or even awareness.
Hmm.
Even the awareness that you brought up that this takes a long time. Now, I don't want to put that on anybody. My
Yeah.
return journey, it's in process,
Yeah.
but it has taken years and years. And I think that's what I'm hearing for you too. I feel like I've learned some things along the way. And I used to be a teacher and I'm now a coach. And those two things together are like, how do I create something to help people along the way?
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
along the way, meaning the return journey.
Yeah.
So whether that's an exercise to walk through and I always try to make them fun and practical and hands-on, sometimes group oriented or just very personal if it's a one-on-one client. But I don't want people's insights, newfound self, not bubbling dreams. They're, I guess, like little sprouts of dreams that have bubbled up on the Camino, that have sprouted on the Camino. I don't want those to go to waste
Mm.
because people misinterpret this is hard, it's taking too long, as I shouldn't be doing this.
Excellent point. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so even though it took me all that time from say 2007 to 2013 to get this idea and start leading groups, I still had a phenomenal life in between.
Nice.
I was traveling. I had left the corporate world and did not go back. That was the key for me
That's
in the
awesome.
interim was to have that understanding that who I was before, what previously served me no longer did. And the walking the Camino gave me the courage to not go back. And it wasn't easy. I was out on those skinny branches all the time. But yeah, I think we can know and take action immediately and start nurturing those dreams right away if they are that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nurturing the dreams and nurturing that best self that
Hmm.
you were talking about.
Yeah.
So he or she doesn't just fade back into everyday life.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about courage. This is a fun thing that I like to talk about on the
Okay.
return journey. We take so much time thinking about what to pack for the Camino.
Hmm.
I think it's such a worthwhile activity to think about what's in that backpack when we come home.
Mm. Tell me more about that.
Well, courage, for example,
Hmm.
a new story. When before I went, one of the things that held me back was people like me just don't do things like this.
Oh, but they do.
But that was the narrative, right?
Uh-huh.
And how long
Sure.
did that hold me back for?
Yeah.
People like me with two kids at home, we don't do things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had I seen earlier that that's just a story that I'm telling myself, that's a
Yeah.
narrative. There were lots of people that I
Yeah.
met that weren't holding that narrative and were walking the Camino.
Yes. You know what? That's exactly why on this podcast I interview people getting ready for the Camino
I
so
love
that
that.
people can see, oh, that person can do it.
Yep.
His or her circumstances are so similar to mine. Wait a minute. I'm not waiting another 2 decades to do this thing.
Yeah.
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 We're inspired by each other.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I think another thing in that backpack when we come home is the inspiration of all the
Hmm.
people that we've met.
Definitely. I call them the supporting cast.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I just finished I'm in the middle of writing a module for the course that I have inside the La Terraza Pilgrim community,
Yeah.
and it's called Telling Your Camino Story. And so we just dropped the lesson, if you will, on your supporting cast and who they are and why they mattered and how they impacted your journey so that we can use those relationships to tell our own Camino stories. And the one before that is I think probably my favorite. It's the main character, you.
Mm,
What was your journey? And I use the hero's journey as the model. How do we tell these stories if we don't even know what just happened? And
yeah.
so we explore that inside there.
Our paths, we're walking similar paths right now. I do some work with Adam Wells, who's out of the UK. I know that you know Adam.
Yeah, I've met Adam. Yeah.
We have been looking at the hero's journey together. He's been looking at it forever, but we've been looking at it for quite some time. We called our business Heroes Camino.
Ah,
We host a monthly gathering called Camino Wisdom Stories online, where there's a theme and people come and they share their stories. And I also just think that your idea of the supporting cast and you as the main character, you seeing yourself as the hero. And the hero is somebody who starts out as one person, is not equipped yet to do the journey, and somehow gathers what is needed to face the obstacles along the way and comes out a different person. So,
so
right
beautiful.
on with that. And I love looking at the supporting cast. I think that the supporting cast can be those people who inspired us,
Mhm.
but it's also sometimes interesting to look at those people that really got under our skin,
Definitely.
do a little bit of work at that and
Yeah.
see, okay, what's the message there for
Yeah.
me?
Well, so often when people tell their Camino stories, they're narrating, which is not the same as looking at the main character, you. And so to give us these different perspectives, here's me as the starring role. Oh, here's the supporting cast, the people who supported me, who pushed my buttons is what I call it in
Hmm.
the work I'm doing. And then I'm going to narrate this story to tell you. So how do we get all of that to come together to actually get the elements of our story in a way that we can understand what just happened?
That's wonderful. And
It's
I think
fun.
in looking at those things, then people get clear about how to tell the story to other people.
Yes.
In our Camino groups, we always laugh and joke that, we try to tell our stories and people's eyes glaze over after a while and they
Yes.
just don't get it. But I think you're giving them the tools to be able to tell that, to tell this story in a way that it really lands with people.
That's the goal.
And then their friends and their family can then really acknowledge what a heroic journey it's been.
Yes.
Good for you. I love
That
that.
is the goal. Yeah. Yeah. Because, there are themes in our Camino stories, right? We can pull out the themes that anybody can relate to.
Yeah,
Anybody can relate to a story of courage, a story of overcoming a giant obstacle. You know, people who are listening who haven't walked the Camino aren't, they don't really get those albergue stories and people snoring and what that was like. We get it because we were there, but that's not the story that people who haven't walked the Camino get. They get the
right.
story of, you know what, when I was there, I was the fussiest, crankiest, most obnoxious person in the room, and I was pointing the finger at everybody else.
Wow.
By the end of the story, I was one of them. I
Yeah.
learned how to share space. I don't even know how the transformation happened, And then I realized dorm life isn't for me. So I got a bigger budget and now I sleep in private rooms. And
That's
that's a
great.
story people will be like, really? How'd you do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So,
great.
I mean, how many pilgrim meals can you talk about, Because
Hmm.
people's point of reference is Thanksgiving when all the, crazy uncle comes out and people are trying to talk politics when they don't believe the same things and hey, you didn't bring the apple pie, you're supposed to bring the pie. So
Yeah.
that's not a pilgrim meal. A pilgrim meal is sharing stories, sharing, breaking bread, and everybody around the table, even though we don't know what we're saying because we can't understand the language.
Absolutely.
But it's still a love fest.
That is so true. When I think about some of the best pilgrim meals I ever had, I could not tell you the food that was on the table. That was just not the main element of the story.
Yeah.
Good point, Nancy.
If you had a great meal, you may have been alone, or you may have been with one or two other people where you were focused on having a great meal and enjoying the food.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what mattered is how many times you raised your glass and clinked it with every single person at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are places where you get both. And Borda comes to mind as one of those
Ah,
places.
Auberge Borda. Yes. Right out of Saint
Yes,
Jean.
where
Hmm.
he just, boy, does he run just the most beautiful place with the most beautiful heart. And he knows what pilgrims need at that
Yeah.
moment. So he creates that atmosphere, and he's a phenomenal cook too.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I'm hoping to stay there next year for one day. I can't take my groups there because the owners of Orson are friends.
Yeah, I
I'd
hear
never,
you.
never live it down if I walked my whole group right on past.
Well, and that's important. When we
Yeah.
make those connections, I think it's
Yeah,
important to nurture all of that.
it is. And the other thing is, I like taking my groups to Orson because it's bigger and
Yeah,
they have more people to meet. If we went to Bordeaux, we'd take up the whole place. It'd just be
good
us.
point.
But I want them to meet other pilgrims because
Yes,
they're going to go the whole journey together. I want to give them
yes.
that chance. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was a solo traveler when he did his Camino at, by the way, age 81
Whoa.
a few years ago, and he's going back next year at age 84 to do the Portuguese. When he started planning his Camino, I said, Dad, please let me plan the first week for you because I knew how important he was going to have somebody book his trip for him. He
Okay.
went through Camino Ways or something like that. And at that age, well, I don't judge it for anybody, by the way, but at that age, he wanted to have his own private room. And I'm like, you do you. If you can get there at age 81 and walk 500 miles, you do what you need to make it. But I said, please let me plan that first week for you. And I really tried to get him into as many albergues with communal meals as I possibly could in the beginning. And he is still in touch with those people that he met at Borda. In fact, he's going back. That's who he'll be walking the Portuguese with.
Isn't that something?
And can I throw one more thing in about my dad, as long as we're on the topic?
Oh, I could do dad stories all day long. Go for it.
So I was taking a group of women, and my dad was going to be walking the Camino at a very similar time. And I didn't want to step on his toes, but I said, Dad, I could go a few days early and walk some of the Camino with you and then go back to meet my group. But if you want to do it on your own, I completely support you in that. He's like, oh, no, that would be fantastic. So I had the opportunity. He walked over the Pyrenees on his own, and I met him in Roncesvalles. We walked for 5 days together, and it changed our relationship. We became closer. I saw my dad through other people's eyes, which was such a gift. And I saw how giving and generous he was for people.
Yeah.
What an absolute inspiration he was for
Oh,
people. And um, I just it one of my very, 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 very most precious Camino gifts that I've ever had.
I love that. It's stories like this that have me challenge the idea that the best way to do the Camino is on your own
Yeah.
because there's so much value in doing it with somebody you love.
Yeah, I agree. I don't believe there is a best way. I
I don't
think that
either.
I know you don't. I've listened to your podcast enough to know. I don't think that there's a best way. I think that the best way is the way that will be most supportive for that person at that time.
At that time, exactly. Yeah, very good.
One of the things that I've looked at over the last several years with this talk about a right way to do the Camino or a better way to do the Camino or any of those conversations, I think about one of the things that I've considered in this is you kind of mentioned it earlier. It goes back to the best way for that person at that time.
Hmm.
I think that many women and men too, but I'm just going to say many women because that's a lot of who I work with, put others first so often in their life and they get to a place where it's like, what about me? I think a lot of women have suffered in that, or is that the right word? A lot of women have not given themselves the best, not treated themselves, not given the best to themselves. And so when I look at them doing the Camino, I don't think they need to stay. Is it for their best to stay in a room with snoring people? Is it best to be tripping over other people's stuff? I think coming out of my relationships, I was fine to do it that way at the time. Here's what I'm trying to get to through all of that is at one point I started to look at how good can we stand it? How good will we let it get? I think
Oh,
that's an upper boundary limit. Like, will I let myself have my backpack carried? Will I let myself do short days? Will I let myself treat myself to one of the nicest places on the Camino? Will I let myself take a rest day?
mm,
Now, I'm not saying that that's the best way to do it either, but I've played around with that and had a really good time with that. And I'll tell you what, that was as much of a challenge
uh-huh,
of treating myself that well
uh-huh.
as was walking 15 to 25 miles a day on my first Camino.
Wow. The phrase that comes to mind is long suffering.
Oh, wow. Say more about that.
Well, what you just described about the roles that women play and how often women um, succumb, not the right word, submit, not the right word, um, serve, be of service to their families
Yeah.
is sort of, for some people, a way of quiet suffering, of
Hmm.
doing what they believe they're supposed to be doing. Now, these are
Hmm.
vast generalizations and do not apply to everyone.
I so agree. That goes for everything I said too.
Yeah. And what you described, a woman who finally has the gift of the Camino all to herself
Yeah.
is setting aside ideas of how we are supposed to be and how we are supposed to be in relationship with the spouses or children or people in our lives, sort of quietly going along with that because that's our role. And again, vastly generalizing. This does not apply to everyone. And full disclosure doesn't apply to me because I've been single for most of my adult life. But then to go on the Camino and have that freedom to choose your own schedule, freedom to choose how far you walk, freedom to choose what you just described. Does someone carry my bag for me? Do I stay in a private room? Do I upgrade? These are things that what it comes down to for me is the awareness and the intentionality with which you walk the Camino.
Yep.
And so walking solo might be best for someone. Walking with a
Yep.
partner might be best for someone else. Walking with a group, better for someone else still.
Yeah. I agree. And my first Camino, pounding out 15, 18 miles a day, carrying my own backpack, staying in albergues, not booking ahead. Times were different then.
Hmm.
That's exactly what I needed at that time. I needed that physical challenge to walk through like that emotional challenge that I was going through in my life.
Yeah.
There's not one right way. I
Yeah.
just I can't I just don't subscribe to that.
I don't either. I don't. And having just walked from Osobreiro to Santiago and going from that sort of idyllic, peaceful trail to hitting Saria, where hundreds of pilgrims a day flood onto the trail, and just observing how people were doing it without judgment, just watching how people were doing it. There is no one way to do this.
Right.
There just isn't.
Right.
And unless I interview every single person on the trail, I can't know why they're there or what their intentions are or what their hopes and expectations are.
Right. And that would only be for that Camino, because
Those people,
you would have to interview them for their second Camino if there is such a
if
thing
there
for them.
is, or the people on the Portuguese route or the English route, or the people
Absolutely.
who walk in December, because there's a different group of people,
Wow. Yep.
you know? So it's just, I just giggle when people go, "You're doing it wrong. You're not supposed to do that. You're not a true pilgrim." Yeah, okay. Have a nice
Hmm.
walk, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, if I were to sum up what is the best way to do this, it's to do it with some awareness of what you're doing and why you're doing it the way you're doing it.
I completely agree.
Yeah. I want to go back to you mentioned your business
Hmm.
and what you're working on with Adam Wells and the Camino Wisdom Stories. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Adam and I I think we're going into our fifth year where we have monthly Camino Wisdom Stories. We meet on Zoom for 90 minutes. We have decided on a theme for the gathering. Adam presents the theme, and then we open it up for stories around that theme. Stories, comments. We have quite a lovely group of regulars, and then we have people that pop in and out. We've had people from all over the world, and we have people jumping in. Like, if they can, it's so fun for them to join when they're on Camino in whatever country that happens to be. Adam and I are both living nomadic lives right now, so we've all gone through this transformation. We've seen changes because we've been together long enough. And we're really getting to know each other because of the themes, are changing. So that's a little bit about what we do there. We have led programs in the past, one called Heroes Camino, and we aren't currently doing any of that right now, but we're working on our themes for next year and our special guests.
How do people find out more about Camino Wisdom Stories if they want to join?
Heroescamino.com, Heros, heroescamino.com. And there's a couple tabs there. They can just go to wisdom stories.
All right. I'll make sure that's in the show notes so people can find that.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, one of the ways that I got connected with you was, well, we met, right?
Yes.
And I have the hardest time remembering where I met people. I just remember I met people and I love people. I loved meeting people. Would you remind us where we met? Isn't that funny?
Well, it's a complicated one. You're forgiven, Nancy, for not remembering because I think we knew about each other
Uh-huh.
before we actually met. But the first time I remember actually having a conversation with you was in Zubiri at
El
something
Palo.
El Palo de Avellano.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a tiny group with me, and you had a tiny group with you, and we were all we were at the same table, as a matter
Uh-huh.
of fact. And I think that was the very first time that we actually had a proper conversation.
Wonderful. And I also had the pleasure of attending one of your workshops.
Yeah.
And I want to say that was at the beginning of this year, but with my timeline, it could have been 5 years ago, but I don't think it was. I think it was earlier when you did the workshop on Bring the Camino Home, and we were looking at bringing home a quality of the Camino.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I loved that.
Thank
And I
you.
would like for you to talk about that because I think that's what you're going to be bringing to La Terraza. Am I correct? Is that the workshop you'll be doing or something similar?
Well, you're going to have to remind me because I've done several different webinars. One of them is Bring a Camino Quality Home,
Hmm.
where everybody chooses a quality and they nurture it. There's a couple
Yeah.
different things that come in there. They nurture it for a few weeks and then they see in what ways they were able to bring it home. We talk about what might have gotten in the way and what we might be able to do about that. I don't know, was that the first one that you came to?
Well, I think mine was one part only, and I
Okay,
just remember um,
I've got it.
nouns and verbs.
Yes.
That's what I remember, nouns and verbs.
That's hysterical. I used to teach Spanish and I also used to teach English. And I thought I loved diagramming sentences,
Oh gosh,
but if I
go for
called
it. They're
this,
all
yeah,
yours.
I know I was one of those little geeky people, but there was something just so wonderful about there being order,
Mm,
like that there was a structure to things that I could map it all out.
yeah.
And I thought, well, I can't call this nouns and verbs of the Camino. Nobody would show up. But what we do is we looked at all the things that we loved on the Camino and we got into small groups and we talked about that. And then people got to write those down. We got to look at all the activities that we did, looking for those verbs like connecting, enjoying, savoring,
Walking,
walking, yeah, carrying,
drinking,
letting go,
eating
drinking,
ice
talk,
cream.
all of those, the feelings, being
Yeah.
content, relaxing, all of those things. And people wrote lists of their favorite nouns, their favorite verbs. And then we looked at the feelings. And in those feelings, how did you feel when you were on the Camino? So then I had people weave sentences together. And I know that you did this where you would pick up one or two verbs. You'd pick up a verb, you would pick up a noun or two, and then you'd put a feeling in there to create sentences as if it's happening right now. And I actually did this for myself. I alluded to this earlier in the podcast that I wrote things like, I am wholeheartedly embracing staying in different places. That's not it. I am wholeheartedly embracing living life as a Camino.
Mm.
I am savoring the views of all the different places that I get to stay. When we do it as if it's happening right now,
Mhm.
our mind doesn't really know the difference between reality and it's a way of creating.
You're creating the new reality.
Yes,
Yes.
Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this when he talks about the feelings, and that feeling is the key. If I'm feeling, as I write that sentence, I'm wholeheartedly living my life as a Camino, I could feel it.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
And so that's basically the workshop is that I lead people through all the steps and they write their lists and I give them some time to write the sentences and then they get into small groups and they share those that brings them even more alive. And when people hear things from other people, they want to add to their own list. And it's a fun gathering. And along those lines, Nancy, one of the things that I say, and I think you do too, is we walk the Camino in community. It's
Hmm.
such an
Hmm.
important part of the Camino experience for us.
Yes.
And I really want to invite people to consider walking that return journey in community as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is my work.
I know it is.
Yeah, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be such a playground.
Yeah.
It can be so fun. It's connecting. It's walking the path with other people. There's so
Hmm.
many wonderful aspects to it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm excited that you are
Me
going to be
too.
coming to La Terraza in January.
Hmm.
And I know my listeners are going to hear me talk about this more, but just to get this out there, January 6th and January 20th, Kathy will be doing a two-part workshop for us in La Terraza. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too.
Is there anything else that you can share with us about the workshop that will further entice us to be there?
I would say that the first part of it is really getting into the feminine, the mystery, and embracing Camino magic as we write
Mm,
all of that and let
okay.
that come. And the second part, the follow-up, I like to do that. I didn't in the beginning, but I'm doing that now, which is all those sentences are great. And if we want to take more of a direct step into it, what else can we do? I think that there's a lot of power in the feminine of attracting, and I don't want to take anything away from that. But the second part of it will be about, okay, you have these great sentences. What can you do with them now?
Yeah. Action. Get into action
Get into some action.
and then you actually see things change in your life.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, as we talked about earlier, that throws wide open the door for that greater power to get to work, whether that's grace or God or whatever you'd like to call it.
Right.
Yeah, some good stuff. Oh my gosh, this is such a fun conversation. I don't want to stop, but
I know.
we can keep going. Anything else we should talk about before we wrap up?
Um, I do have a funny story about my dad that I could tell if I can say the word SHIT. I don't know if that's okay. If not, I can put a little bleep in there if you want to hear it.
Let's have that story about your dad.
So the story that I like to tell about my dad that just I love this story so much. I love telling this story so much. Our very first day out of Roncesvalles, what's the very next Burguete? We walked through
Borghete. Hmm.
Burguete. And a little while later, if you've been on the trail, you come upon these steps that they're like square steps. I don't know how to describe them. There's like square pillars that are up out of the ground that cross over some running water.
Yes.
And the water's too deep to walk through without getting really wet. And the pillars are too high to put poles down into. And my dad's one fear on the Camino was that he was going to fall. He had had a hip replacement, and a few years later he fell. He broke his hip that had been replaced, and they couldn't do anything, and he was miserably uncomfortable for a long
Oh,
time while that healed. So he was really, really, really nervous about falling. So here's my dad, and he sees this thing, and I can just see him shaking. He's just standing there, and I can tell he's trying to figure out how to get out of this.
oh,
And he said, "Go ahead and go over." And I crossed over, and then I saw him just shaking. And this is not my dad. My dad climbs 14,000-foot mountains. He walks every time he plays golf. He skied up until a couple of years ago, and this is not my dad, but he was really scared. Well,
oh,
he finally gets the courage up, takes the first step. So he has one foot in front of him, one foot behind, and he cannot let go of that foot behind him. He's just
oh.
there until he again summons the courage. And now he's done one step. And this goes on for minutes. And finally he gets to the other side. And I can just see the relief. But I can also see like, oh my gosh, it's like conquering that first demon on the Camino.
Hmm.
So I'm celebrating for him, and we continue walking. And, he starts telling me about the people that he's been meeting. And he says, "You know what, Kathy?" He said, "I'm doing something really cool. I want to tell you about it." I'm like, "What's that, Dad?" He said, "Every day that I walk the Camino, I'm going to think of one awe moment." I'm like, "Dad, that's amazing." He's like, "Yeah, yesterday's awe moment was watching all or meeting all the people at dinner and hearing their stories." I'm like, "That's great." He said, "Kathy, those steps back there, that was not an awe moment. That was an awe shit moment." So that's my dad's story.
Dad. Wow.
That's my dad's
I
story.
love it. So I think what you're talking about, it's right shortly before you get to Biscaret.
Yes, I think
And
so.
yeah. And so, spoiler alert for other people who have not yet walked the Camino Frances and will be walking it, and that whole description terrifies you, you can actually bypass it by going up onto the road.
My dad did not know that. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. I have never once had any fear of crossing those
Yeah,
steps. I think it was just, him meeting his greatest fear. And don't we all do that
absolutely.
at some point on the Camino, whether it's receiving help or,
Yeah. Well, and the scary thing about that particular one, because there are a couple places where you have to cross small creeks or, rivers, and there's stones that they've put up to create a bridge. But at times, and not always, but at times that water is rushing at very
Mhm.
high level and very with great enthusiasm. And it looks as though if you tipped over, you'd be swept away. And so it is a little intimidating. And I sometimes experience vertigo. And so I'm the one who goes, hey, just in case anybody wants it, you can go up onto the road and go around. Yeah. So,
Good to know.
yeah.
Great tip. I did not know that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the dad story. Thanks for your insights. I am so looking forward to being with you in January. And how do people reach you? How do people find you?
My website is kathykecoaching.com.
Okay.
And my last name is K, but it's spelled Kehe. But the website is Kathy, just the letter K, coaching.com.
Great. I'll have that in the show notes so no one has to work too hard to remember that. It'll be in
Yeah.
there for you.
And my email is Kathy@KathyKcoaching.com.
There we go. Easy to find you. Yeah. And we've just touched the surface of everything that you do. So hopefully people will check out your website and find out the other things that you do. How's that for a teaser?
Sounds great. And I look forward to being with you in January.
Wonderful. Kathy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.